welcome to ScreenHour with me, Kieran.
And me, Mikey.
Where we will discuss the latest releases of films, series and games regarding our own impressions and experiences. We will also warn you before we deep dive into any spoilers.
In this episode, we're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. So, in this typical way, more than usual, we're going to do a Convince Me episode. So Kieran hasn't watched Ant-Man, and I'm going to, in a positive light, convince Kieran to watch it. So it's not going to be like, dare I say, any long-term listeners would have remembered the Jurassic Dominion episode where Kieran convinced me not to watch it. Right out the bat, this is a film I think you should watch. And I'm going to go through a list of reasons why and a few nitpicky things I'll go through.
Is it something I can watch without having seen the first and the second one?
To answer Kieran's question straight away, yes. But, I could go on for about half an hour about this subject in itself. One of Marvel's best strengths is one of its biggest weakness is that everything is connected. And it really rewards those people who watch everything. But sometimes you think to yourself, what's going on? Why don't I know then? Or you feel the only thing what happens mainly, and especially in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania, is that you feel like you're having a bit of FOMO, where in the sense that everybody else might know that person, might know that character, and might understand why they're here, but it's not gonna impact the story that much. In the sense that it's not gonna stop you enjoying the film. You won't be like, who are those people? Why have they came here? What's going on? Yeah, you would have learned more about their character from the show they might have been in, or the last film they might have been in. But at the same time, unless you are really, not really an observant person, or you watch a film with your eyes closed and your ears shut, you're going to learn. It shows what you need and what you want to know.
So it sort of holds your hand, but it doesn't sort of explain everything. It's sort of
you're more rewarded by watching the shows. So Loki is the one which is the most entangled with this. But at the same time, you can watch it self-contained anyway, like a lot of people do.
I.e. me.
I.e. you, and I.e. people. I know people who hadn't watched any of the Avengers, any of the single films between. They just watched the Avengers films, or they'd missed out quite a few of the films. Then they watched Infinity War and Endgame or something like that. And this is in a similar case where, the plot's not going to crumble, but you will be rewarded by watching the other shows. So I was going to say, and this is more so for the listeners and Kieran, because he just answered my question. I didn't know he hadn't watched the first one or the second one. Ant-Man himself, Paul Rudd, smashes the role of being an everyday guy who has just become a superhero, and he still carries that on really well in this. But he has changed quite a bit in the better, and it's more so for comedy reasons, but just as much as for dramatic purpose. If you think about the cast of the Marvel heroes, the main Avengers cast, apart from mild spoilers for Love and Thunder, apart from Thor, really, Scott is the only dad, and that's one of the main cruxes of the plot for this film, is being a dad. And
Tony's technically a dad in Endgame.
Yeah, exactly. Tony is, yeah, but again, it's only for that one film.
Yeah,
and then spoilers, Blamour. But it's still quite a funny, quirky film. All the Ant-Mans are, but this one is definitely, and again, this is to my own preference, I'd say. But if you like sci-fi stuff, more sci-fi than any of the Marvel films.
I have heard that.
Even though Guardians of the Galaxy is meant to be like a space opera, this is the most sci-fi you get. As performance-wise, he really, like, if you've watched the other two, this wouldn't be much of a surprise to you. But he really goes toe-to-toe with Jonathan Majors, which I'll get to in a minute. But, you know, this isn't a Jonathan Majors podcast. But this week and last week, he is a shining example of being a great actor. And probably in a couple of weeks' time when we watch Creed 3, I imagine.
Yeah.
How good he is in that, if this record carries on. But Michelle Pfeiffer is absolutely great in it. She probably carries... She has, like, an awful job. She has the hard job, not like she does she does a terrible job. It's a hard thing to get an actor to do, but she's the exposition machine. And she has to explain something which has happened, but it's in still an emotional and quote-unquote acting way.
So who's she playing? Catwoman?
She does that really well. Oh, you sound like my granddad. Who's she playing? Catwoman. I'm not out of touch, just the kids who are out of touch. But no, she doesn't play Catwoman. She plays his Miles Ballers again for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She plays the Wasp's mother, so the original Wasp.
Oh, okay.
Michael Douglas's, Hank's wife.
Yeah, wife. Okay.
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer does. So she's great. A person who I haven't seen in much of it is Ant-Man's daughter, Cassie Lang. She's good in it. She's a teenage kid, so she's not too annoying, but everything she does, the film does a good way of showing why she'd do that, or what mistakes she'd make is why she's led to believe, to think that's a good idea, or why she's acting up. And she's doing it all with good intentions as well. A quick plot summary is like, you discover at the end of Endgame, well, right at the start of Endgame, what the quantum realm is, and the quantum realm is out of the universe. It's its own realm. So Michelle Pfeiffer, again, mild spoilers for the last two, in typical MCU fashion. Again, you just get to explain to you, but for the sake of describing the plot, Michelle Pfeiffer was trapped in the quantum realm. She got trapped there like 30 years ago, more when she was using her Wasp outfit, malfunctioned, and she kept shrinking and gets stuck in the quantum realm. So at the end of the last film, as in Ant-Man and the Wasp film, they save her out of the quantum realm. They get her back. And Michelle Pfeiffer says it's like a whole realm out there with like civilizations and such. And Cassie learns of this, and she keeps learning with this with Michael Douglas's character Hank Pym. And they think, we could do with like getting a mapping out like the realm and see if we can help the civilizations in there and the people in there. There might be more people trapped in there. We don't know. So Cassie opens this device, and this is all like very like shot. Literally, this all happens in the first less than 10 minutes of the film. Cassie gets this doohickey out, as they would say, to try and map the universe, to try and learn about it so they can help people. And this develops a signal, and then, spoilers, they get pulled into the quantum realm, and then the rest follows shenanigans. Probably the best takeaway from the film is that Jonathan Majors, again, similar to Devotion, last week's topic, he absolutely smashes the role in the sense that he feels, in every scene he's in, he feels like he's controlling the scene, in the sense that his character is meant to be a conqueror, and he's telling you his intentions, and you do not want to stop him from getting what he's intending to do. He's threatening. He always feels like he's commanding a scene in a good way. There's certain points in the film where the good guys are quote unquote foiling his plans, and he just goes ballistic. So there's a lot of points where he feels like he's the regime, he's the organisation, he's organised, he knows what's going on. But when shit hits the fan, he does go bonkers, and it really is powerful.
When you say bonkers, is it bonkers as in like he's out of control, or there's like a controlled like aggression?
A bit of both, really. In certain scenes, when things go really bad, he goes absolutely mental, but he just like focuses in aggression as well. He's not just some of the villains in the Marvel like cinematic universe really struggle because they're just carbon copies of the hero and they have the same power set and things like that. Where there's, you've got Loki, you've got Killmonger, and I'm a big like Marvel guy. Like, don't get me wrong, I've watched all of them at least twice, and I struggle to name like many more than that. Like straight off the top of my head, if I think about it, I probably can. Like I know I can, but it's probably because I'm fresh out of this. Don't get me wrong, but Kang is formidable, and I'll go into more in spoilers, but there's a lot more to happen with his performance.
Well, so his character doesn't die.
Again, I'll delve into more of that into spoilers.
Is Kang from the quantum realm?
No, Kang isn't, and I'll get into like plot specifics in a bit. But you see, when I explain it, it'll make more sense.
Okay.
But again, it's very plot specific. Another thing I would say, and this is a big positive, is that you spend most of the film in the quantum realm, and it is a mad place in the sense that it looks beautiful. It looks very cosmic. There's quite a few aliens. There's a few like funny jokes with like the aliens who are residents. There's quirky moments. A bit of the old, and it's played for laughs, but it's also played for dramatics. But the old fish out of water type of thing, that's done well. The relationship between Scott Lang and Cassie Lang, his daughter, is done well. It's not too forced. The pacing, it went quite quick because it's when there isn't an action beat. If there isn't action going on, you're digesting which funny joke has happened. So I'm a big believer in, the reason I go on about pacing so much is that if something's funny or if you're watching something and like you're on the edge of your seat, you're just not bored, or you're not like thinking, bloody hell, this has been on for a while. And it managed to, the funny bits are funny, the action bits are good. A bit in this which I do really like, and it's towards the end, and I'll get to more particulars later on. But the hand-to-hand combat which I didn't see coming, that is good. And if you've watched it, you know what I'm referring to. There's a few tense moments which I didn't expect. A few really tense moments. You could, and I say this because there was a few families behind me, and there's families in the screening. You could take a child like a 10-year-old to go see this, and they probably wouldn't laugh at all the jokes, but they'd understand what was going on, and they'd laugh at some jokes, and they'd find it fun because it's in a wacky world, and it's a Marvel superhero film. And I suppose not a lot of the Marvel films you could say that about, really.
Which is weird considering Marvel is aimed at 10-year-old kids.
Well, originally it was, wasn't it?
No, it still is, mate. It still is.
Yeah, Kieran does this too. Not so much one because I'm not like a diehard fanboy on it, but it is. I think it's aimed at small teenagers. A lot of it is, but I think there is one big misstep. I think the film done, but it's a very plot particular point. Apart from a real plot specific point, I can't really think of one major niggly things. Have you got any questions you'd want to point at me, ask me before like we get into plot like specifics?
I mean, I suppose most of my questions are more plot specific. But I think I did watch like maybe the first one, and I just didn't quite vibe with it. I don't know. I didn't. Yeah. So I don't think I watched all of it. I think I only watched maybe half of it or something. How does Scott get his powers? Like, how does he become Ant-Man?
Yeah, essentially, it's just he's got the suit, and he just knows how to use the suit really well.
So it's the suit that shrinks him. It's not him.
Oh, you don't have like physical like radioactive man powers or anything like that. It's just the suit. He's just using pin particles which are in the suit, and he just knows how to use that, and he's smart. Like,
Oh, okay, so it's more. It's so as you say, like this is the most scientific sort of film with the whole quantum realm. So basically, his superhero is about being scientific and about how. But is Scott? Because from bits of clips and stuff I've seen of Ant-Man, and even like seeing him in Infinity War and Endgame and whatever, right? He, like you say, he plays that everyday man. So is he a scientist, or did he like stumble upon becoming Ant-Man, or?
well, he stumbled on becoming Ant-Man, and he's like an ex-con, and he mentions that quite a bit. Like that's how he stole the Ant-Man suit in the first film, like back in 2015. So he stumbled across it, but he is. I don't think it's really. I can't remember it being explained, but he knows what's going on with the science to do with the suit, and also particularly now in the third film, because he has been Ant-Man for a while, he knows how to use it in combat. He knows how to use it just in general. He knows the science of it.
Yeah.
He's like, again, very mild spoilers. What this does well is the relationship between father and daughter, and he's teaching her how to use the suit in combat type of thing. Because, again, not to be condescending to any, like, I mean, I presume if you watch this, you probably know the Marvel, listen to this, sorry, you know the Marvel films, but his power is essentially, spoilers, he shrinks down to the size of an ant, but he still have like strength as Scott.
Yeah.
So it's him using momentum and like in midair going back to the size of a bloke, then going small or whatever, and just using mad moves.
What
like
about when he's like the size of, I don't know, like a skyscraper? Has he still got the strength of his normal self?
No, it's quite the opposite then. He's got the size strength of a giant man then, isn't he?
That makes no sense. So if he shrinks down and becomes a small person, yet he's as strong as he is as a big person, why is it when he's a bigger person, he's not still the same strength?
I don't know, because comics.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing I'd describe the film about is that it's a fun film, but if you are into Marvel in like the grander scheme of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know what's coming. Both post-credit scene and mid-credit scene really embrace the whole, oh God, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's setting up the big bad or like the next few films. But this one is a fun film, but it leaves you wanting more. And I suppose that is a good thing in itself.
One other sort of question, I guess, just before we jump into spoilers then, is judging by ratings, this is technically on par for being one of the worst Marvel films since Iron Man. Why do you think that has been rated as it is, considering you enjoyed it so much?
I think it is. Well, I wouldn't. I almost want to say I know what it is. I know why it is because the way it ends. The way it ends is that it's very. If it wasn't an MCU film and this was just a film and you didn't know there was more films to come, you'd feel like you'd been had. Put it that way. You'd feel like you was missing a ending. That's why I feel like it is.
Oh, okay.
As a critic's review, I've lowered it quite low. As Kieran said, it's one of the lowest. The audience score is quite high, and I can see why that is. But I think the critics have got to this point now where, because the MCU films have been going since 2008, they expect a certain benchmark of the MCU films. And if those are not set up, and if it doesn't get to that standard, and I think the fans are a bit like this, they are totally, as the Welsh say, tamping. They are like, they expected more. They are angry and pissed off. That's why I think it hasn't got it.
Do you reckon it's the best of the Ant-Mans?
I think it is, yeah. It's the best of the Ant-Mans. But I like them, you see. If you like Marvel films, you're going to like this. You might be a bit annoyed at the end, but I think that's only because you
want to know what happens next now and not wait.
Yeah, because you just enjoyed the ride, like.
Before we get into the juicy spoilers, we'd like to take a moment to thank you for listening to us. And to help further our aspirations, we would forever appreciate it were you to like, subscribe, and follow us on your preferred platforms. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, and Instagram. with our handle, the ScreenHour. And if you'd like to participate in an episode, leave your thoughts on what you'd like to see us cover next. Now, time for those spoilers. You have been warned.
Kang is a great villain in it, but the whole point, again, this is, people know if they're into Marvel films, they've released the Marvel slate, so in like a couple of years' time, the big Avengers film is called Kang Dynasty. The Kang character is that there's loads of Kangs across the multiverse, and the one who was in this is like the prime Kang, who's like the Kang the Conqueror. At the end of the post-credit scene, sorry, the mid-credit scene, there's loads of Kangs. So do you know in Rick and Morty when there's a council of like Rick?
Oh yeah,
It's like that. But there's loads. All these Kangs are from different multiverses.
that's actually really interesting.
And these Kangs are like, they're all played by Jonathan Majors, but one of them's like an Egyptian one. One of them looks like, half his head's there and he looks quite robotic. It looks like he's from Cyberpunk. He looks like a more sexualized Cyberpunk guy.
So that's really interesting to be fair, because one of my favorite episodes of Rick and Morty is when they explore the multiverse, and it's when you're in what is the planet called? Or they're on the Citadel. That's it. They're on the Citadel. And then it's like there's a Morty running for mayor, and then he ends up getting it, and then he realizes evil. Like that's one of my favorite Rick and Morty episodes. That was.
What's good about that is it gives you a lot of license to have different aspects on characters, and that's probably what's so good about that Rick and Morty episode. So I can understand why people think it was a bit bad, really, because you spend the entire film, and Kang again is a great villain. Jonathan Majors, there's like a lot of passion and anger, but in his character, and you you just feel like you want more of it. And in the end, he does he explodes. He's like in typical sci-fi manner. There's this power MacGuffin, which makes him. That's how he managed to transport. Like he got lost into the quantum realm. On this ship, he goes into there by accident, and he's in prison there and exiled there. And across the film, he wants his machine, he wants the power core back. He needs it to be back, shrink back down. In the end fight, this explodes on him, and so he gets blammoed, or you don't know if he's dead or whatever. But you spend the entire film, Ant-Man and the good guys, trying to kill the Kang, and then 2 or 3 minutes later you realise there's hundreds of them. In the mid-credit scene you realise there's 6 Kang leaders, and then it goes out out of a gladiator pit, and there's hundreds.
I find that really interesting, where they can go from there, and just think of how many different films you could have to see the rise and fall of each individual one.
So this is, I think, again, it's a double-edged sword. If you're into that, you're probably really into that. And I can understand why they've done that, because Kangan, loosely, I know in the comics, that is him. He does have these multitudes of Kangs. He's a Avengers level threat per se. There's been multiple times when he's gone toe-to-toe with Avengers. His power set, by the way, is that he comes from really in the future, eons in the future. And I would say, when I say his suit gives him powers, it's not like Iron Man who's got weapons and things like that. It's a lot more. It's more like Asgardian in the sense that his science is so far ahead, it's almost like magic. So he's using telekinetic powers and throwing people about and blasting them with lasers. And because it's so far ahead in the future, it looks a bit abstract but not stupid. One of my favourite takeaways of the film is the character arc of Darren Cross. Is the bad guy from the first Ant-Man film, and he plays a character which everybody plays for laughs, really, because he's quite a weird character, and he's in the Avengers game, the most recent Avengers game, which came out a few years ago. It's called Murdoch, the machine only designed for killing. And if you know that character, he's basically just a big floating head with tiny legs and tiny arms. And the big floating head has buzzsaws on it and laser beams. The actor Corey Stoll, who plays Downcross, manages to carry it so well. And because it's rather played for laughs, or it's played for quite emotional bits, it is, whether it's one of those two beats, it's absolutely nailed. So he's the bad guy of the first film, and as I say, at the very end of the first film, his suit then malfunctions as they're having their fight, and he's got like I said, it's a typical Marvel syndrome in the sense that the bad guy in the first Ant-Man film has the same powers as Scott. He shrinks down really small. He has a very similar suit, but it can shoot stuff, and he has the same powers. When they're fighting at the end of the first film, his suit malfunctions, and he ends up going to the quantum realm. And Kang picks him up, the bad guy. He's about to die, and he fixes him. And I use the term "fix" very loosely. And he just enlarges his head, and he looks like a huge lead with tiny little arms. But him and Kang have this, no way sexual, but he has this almost like domestic abuse, Stockholm syndrome type of thing going on, where Kang just abuses him. And like, there's basically a point where he says, "Don't speak when I'm speaking," and he slaps him across the room. And that was the point in the cinema where I'm quite bad for this and I shouldn't do this really. But me and my friend Dan looked at each other and says, "Oh, he's going to turn face, like he's going to turn good guy because he's sick of getting battered and whatever." And towards the end of the film, he does do that. It is good and he's earned. The scenes he's in are funny, or, he's a bit cracked. He's tapped. He's again, like, it goes back to the old thing with Marvel films and Marvel shows, is if you remember that character, which I did, it was like a rewarding callback. But if you didn't remember him throughout the film, it's hinted towards, like, he even has literally a couple of beats of flashback of Scott Lang remembering who he is, and also all the other characters in the Ant-Man family remember him, and he's talking to him, and he's talking to like Scott's daughter. So you connect the dots and realise he's from one of the old films anyway. So, and you realise why he's turned good guys in the end. When Kang and Ant-Man are having their final fight, everybody else has managed, they want to get out of the realm. That's the big deal. They need to escape. So everybody else, and by everybody else I mean has escaped, is that Michelle Pfeiffer's escaped, the Wasp has escaped, Michael Douglas' character has escaped, and so's the daughter. They've all escaped, and it's just Scott fighting Kang, and Kang is dismantling him. Another got quite little thing, which, sounds quite homoerotic, but it's quite cool, really, is Jonathan Majors looks absolutely jacked in it.
Well, I imagine he's jacked from his Creed training.
Well, this is what I says to the boys. I said, Creed probably said, "Get training, you got to become a beast," and Marvel are probably like, "Yeah, sounds good to us. It works to our benefit as well." They're fighting at the very end. And like I said, it's a very sci-fi film, so there's not much hand-to-hand fighting. And the hand-to-hand fighting at the end is done quite well. It's quite, there's emotional stakes. And Paul Rudd really, I didn't really mention it in non-spoilers, but like I said, he's funny when he needs to be, and he's emotional when he needs to be, and he does that father-daughter relationship well. But the stakes at the end, when you think he's going to die, and as bad as this sounds, I wanted Scott Lang to die, because he's still, the Kangs, as I like to say now, we're in spoilers, is that they would have felt like more of a threat, because it would have killed. Scott's not the most powerful Avenger.
Well, I was just thinking, like, how is he meant to fight Kang that can use telekinesis, and all he can do is shrink really small and punch?
For what it's worth, he is Giant Man a few times, so he does use his Giant Man powers, which makes him like pretty OP, as we would say in the gaming community.
Overpowered.
But he uses that quite a bit. But in the fight with Kang, you feel like he's going to die, and it would have made Kang a threat. Scott's lovable. You would have been a bit gutted as an audience, and I feel like they should have done that.
Yeah, I'd say the way you've described it to me, that does sound like a brilliant way to have done it. That would have really pulled on your heartstrings. Plus, it probably would have given the ending that people may have wanted, because Scott's gone, Kang's, got this whole dynasty coming. That would have been, tune in next week sort of situation where it's like shit's about to kick off. But obviously, you'd have to say goodbye to Paul Rudd, unless if there's so many different Kangs from different multiverses or whatever, who knows? There could be a different Scott. So you can bring Paul Rudd back.
You know, the comics aren't ashamed of this, and they've done it. It was, I don't want to, this isn't a review of Doctor Strange, but they messed up in Doctor Strange because we only really concentrated on 3 multiverses, where it could have concentrated on countless many more. Where, as Kieran says, they do it in the comics. I can think on top of my head, I know the Injustice comics quite well. They do it in Injustice with Oliver Queen. Oliver Queen dies in one universe, and they just pull him in from another universe and get him to, help out, type of thing.
Yeah.
So they could have done that, and it gives you a lot of license to play around.
Exactly. So it's not like you're getting rid of the actor, you're just changing the script a bit, you're making it more interesting. But then there will become a time when that gets a bit fatiguing, where it's like, oh, he's not really dead because I'll just bring him back from another multiverse. So you have got to play with that delicately.
Like you say, I really do agree with it, because when you start doing, as a sci-fi thing, when you start introducing multiverse things, you have the problem which we've just spoke about now, is that the audience wonder, even if he does die, it's like now with time travel, everybody had the Endgame thing, yeah, Tony's dead, but can you not just bring him back from time travel? Can you not? It's like multiverse things.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, oh, he's dead, where's the stakes? And I'm not talking about sirloin or ribeye, where is if someone dies, you as an audience think, oh, they can just come back, it's no big drama.
Yeah. Just don't worry about it, mate.
Just don't worry about it, mate. It's a good film. I just feel like they were scared of killing Paul Rudd, because Paul Rudd's likeable. He's a good draw for a lot of people. But also on top of that, it would have took... If you saw Kang kick the actual crap out of him, which he was getting the crap kicked out of him for a bit, he's quite a bit bloody. I feel like if he would have killed him by beating him up, that would have killed your ratings, as in, age ratings. So you would not have got bums on seats for these 10-year-old kids, and it would have been like a 15.
True.
And that's a lot of your audience gone.
That's the thing with family films, is you're not just bringing in the parents, you're bringing in the kids. So that's like twice as many ticket sales per family.
As you say, nuclear family, typical nuclear families, two parents, 2 kids. As you say, you're doubling your money, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's more of the Marvel stuff you probably like, if you like Marvel.
So this is probably big spoilers then. So do we have any other Avenger drop in at some point?
No.
No.
You don't have anybody. Again, that might be something somebody's kicked off about.
I think that's good, that you don't always need to keep throwing in just because, if someone says, oh, Iron Man's in this in this scene, right at the end of the film, and you're like, oh, I'm going to spend all my money to go watch this film I'm not really asked about, just so I can see 3 seconds of Iron Man.
It does a really good job of giving Kang's main introduction time to breathe, an area to breathe, and introducing the quantum realm. I feel like if you had more extra Avengers in it, it would have took away from the father-daughter relationship.
And I also think it's a little bit of an insult at times, when it's sort of like, you've got Paul Rudd playing as Ant-Man, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're going to throw in Chris Hemsworth as well, because that'll get more people into the cinema, because people love Chris Hemsworth. People aren't really asked about Paul Rudd. So we'll just throw Chris Hemsworth in there because we'll get more people going to want to see the Ant-Man film, right? And instead they're like, actually, we believe in Paul Rudd, and we know we can bring bums on seats, sort of thing. So I just feel it's a bit of a cop-out and a bit of a throw your actors under the bus when they try and bring in other, characters and actors from their other franchises.
Yeah, exactly. You should have faith in them a bit more. You don't want... It's almost like stage etiquette. You don't want to upstage other people. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania.
So do you reckon it's is it cinema worthy?
Yeah, to give it, as Kieran's hinting towards our ratings, it's definitely a cinema trip game, because it's very sci-fi in the sense that it looks beautiful. It's also on top of that, and I like this, but there's a few bits when it feels very Star Warsy, when they go to a pub, and it feels like
on Tatooine.
Exactly, and it feels like the Mos Eisley cantina from Tatooine. Yeah. When they get kidnapped and they're on taken by locals, and there's like quite a funny exchange there, local tribesmen. But the reason I say go see it in the cinema is because it looks great, and it's a very fantastical, epic sci-fi film.
Do you think on some level people that know very little about Marvel and the whole like timeline of everything will probably enjoy this film more than those that are obsessed with the Marvel and know everything about that needs to be known?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
You reckon? Yeah.
The real Marvel nerds know, like me, and like a lot of the Marvel nerds know that there's a film in 2025 called Kang Dynasty. Do you know what I mean? So they're thinking to themselves, before they even went into the film, they know that Kang was going to, one version of Kang at least was going to be there to stay.
Yeah.
Because there's a film named after him coming out in 2025.
Final question then is, do we have any Go-Go Power Rangers moment like we did in Wakanda Forever?
Oh, what? You mean like cheap, dodgy costumes?
Yeah, that's like, yeah, it just ruins the feel and the look of the film. That it's like, what? There's no point in doing that. Like,
funny actually, I made the comparison in my head to the minions of Kang, which are like, it's never really explained what they are. They're almost robots, but they're not because they act like humans. But the way when one of the good guys, whether it be like Scott or Cassie, defeats him, or Michelle Pfeiffer defeats them, is they like explode it like, or like putty, like the Power Rangers bad guys, like putty, like dough, almost.
all right.
So that's weird.
Is that more of like a quantum realm effect sort of thing?
I think so, yeah.
Well, there we are then.
I think you should go see it in a cinema.
Have you convinced me to go and see it? I don't know, but I'm definitely leaning more towards going to see it now than I was to begin with, to be honest. You've actually, made it sound half decent.
I can understand why it has had the slagging from critics, and I will be interested now after I've said my 2 pence on it per se, to understand why people have gave it the slagging. I think it's just because they expect so much. You want more of what he's gave you. Have you got anything particular, like any moment of television or film or game you think you recommend?
I got a fair bit to be honest, but I actually think I want to save something for an episode. I've been watching a lot of World War II, World War One films lately, because I happened to watch All Quiet on the Western Front. Finally got around to watching it, and I was like, whoa. Okay, this is pretty sick. If you haven't watched All Quiet on the Western Front, I think you should watch it. It is quite incredible. Just purely, I mean, there's a lot of amazing things about it, but just purely for the cinematography, it's incredible. So I've watched quite a few war films like on Netflix and on Disney and all the different platforms possible. I've watched a lot, and literally last night I was trying to look for something else. And then I finally, as I was clicking across, I saw The Last Duel. And I was like, I've been wanting to watch that for ages because me and Mikey wanted to watch it when it was at the cinema.
Yeah, it came out on Disney like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, we wanted to go and see it, and we were at yours, and we looked at the cinema, and it was like, oh, it's not at the cinema anymore. And we're like, wait, wasn't it released like 2 weeks ago? Right? And it made no sense. We couldn't get to see it at the cinema. So we're like, oh, all right, guess we're not seeing that film then. But I was always intrigued to see it, and I started watching it last night. I couldn't watch all of it because I had to go to bed early for work this morning, but I watched half of it, and I watched the other half tonight. But the first sort of 25 minutes, 30 minutes, I wasn't quite sure exactly what was going on and where it was going. But then as soon as you got that chapter 2 title card, right, and it says from the other character's perspective, like their truth, I was like, and then it started playing from the beginning again. And I was like, oh, I know exactly where this is going. I know what this is trying to do. I was actually really hooked. And then I was like really into it. And it's not what you think it is, because the film is got a darker theme than what you think. Have you seen it yet?
Have I seen it yet? I've watched it. I did watch it in the cinema, like literally a week later from like when me and you tried to watch it. Yeah. So I watched it in the cinema, and then I watched it again since at home. And that, don't want to give it away.
So yeah, don't spoil that for me, yeah.
I won't give it away, but it gives you some type of idea of how good it is. I've watched it twice, or how good I think it is, dare I say. I'll tell you now, the only reason it never done that well in the box office, I think, is that it's just
an independent film?
It's not so much that. It's more so the subject matter is rough subject matter. Very mild spoilers for the old plot.
Yeah, so it's not for kids at all.
Like Kieran says, it's you see it from 3 different points of view, and it's about a rape of a woman, and you're seeing a depiction of rape 3 times, and it's just hard marketing to watch a film where, like, the grand total of watching a rape scene is probably about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. As to get to a wider audience, I can see why it would have been hard to do that.
Yeah. It's definitely done better. It's done far better since it's been on the streaming platform.
Yeah, exactly. And it really would, because it was out in the cinema for like 10 minutes in like one show in a fucking week or whatever. To the point where, like Kieran's mentioned, we couldn't find it when we wanted to watch it. But it's great. And it's, again, I won't get into spoilers, but it really does a good job of getting its point across without being condescending. And I'll leave it at that because Kieran hasn't watched it at the end. But yeah, I'd recommend anyone to watch it, really.
Yeah, because I'm only halfway through, but part of me is like, yeah, we might have missed a boat, but I would probably like to do an episode on it because it's quite a strong subject matter.
I have a lot to say about it. Like, the only people I wouldn't want to speak for anybody too much, but I'll be condescending despite us being a reviewing podcast, really. The only person I wouldn't recommend it to is like a survivor of something as rough as that, as rape.
I wouldn't say I wouldn't recommend it because I haven't watched all of it, but I think it's a bit of it's shining a light on the issue, and it's allowing people to feel confident enough to speak out about it, rather than because remember, the victim is not the person that has the problem, and that's how the victim sees themselves: is it's their fault.
Oh, I know that. Like, that's why I use the term survivor, not victim. Like,
well, yeah.
At the same time, I can see why it would be.
For sure, it'd be hard to watch.
But that's probably one of the good elements of the film, if I'm being honest. Again, that's probably why it suffered in the cinemas and not that many people watched it, or it got the marketing it deserved, because it's a film where you watch it and then you don't feel great about watching it, but it's a great film.
And to be fair, I will say Adam Driver's English accent is actually not bad.
Everybody's accent's pretty good. Even Ben Affleck's accent's quite good.
I'm having a bit of a rough time with Matt Damon's accent. There's some words where I still hear the American sort of like nasal. So Adam Driver's is very plain, and every time I hear it, I'm like, ooh, say more.
Yeah, I'm glad you're watching that. I should have recommended, for what it's worth, I'm a bad friend. I should have told you it was on Disney ages ago, because I remember seeing it on there and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. As I've just delved into, that's why never done that one in the cinema. Ridley Scott released that, not like by him, I know directors don't physically release their own film into the studios, but he had that come out and he had The House of Gucci come out within like the same 3 weeks.
Oh yeah, the House of Gucci would 100% put more bums on seats than the Last Duel.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot more romanticised and glamorised. It's less explicit, shall we say. My moment or thing I'd recommend. So last week in Britain, we had the Brits, which is a music award show, and it was just incredibly awkward to watch. I'm quite into my music, and I look at it through nostalgic glasses because I used to watch it with my mum when I was a kid. She's quite into her music, whatever.
Yeah, your mum's mad into her music. She knows everything.
Yeah. So I thought I'd watch that, and I'd talk to my mum about it after. And there was a few good performances at the Brits, don't get me wrong, especially Stormzy and Harry Styles and whatever. But it was just, I don't know, it felt very awkward. The show itself, like the presenting the awards and such, was, I don't know, it was really hit and miss with me. Some of the performances again were great. But what I'm getting to is that I watched the BAFTAs last night, and the BAFTAs, whether it be Richard E. Grant's presenting, or whether it be Alison Hammond, or the last little interview break she done, which wasn't awkward, it was quite fun, and everybody in it was just seemed quite charming or endearing. I don't know, I am more into film, but it was a good watch. And even people, when they won the awards, they didn't. Some award exceptional speeches, some people can come across as absolute cocks, like. But even in this, every award person who has accepted it seemed lovely and seemed like you wanted to support them and wanted to root for them. And not like so much like you can spoil a war show, so I won't go into it too much. But you just turn the news on, you heard about it, or listened to the radio on the drive into work this morning. You probably would have caught the cover of it. But All Quiet on the Western Front, I've been waiting to watch that before Kieran watched it. As soon as it came out, and it's on my list. It's in typical fashion of
Too many things to do.
too many things to watch, and I want to devote a time to it, and I'll sit and watch it.
So it is long as well. I think it's almost 3 hours.
It's almost 3 hours. But yeah, the team from that won quite a lot. I'd recommend what I'm going to say is if you listen to this podcast, you're probably into film and TV. If you're into film and TV, watch the BAFTAs. It's good. It's a nice little refreshing thing.
But yeah, I find with award shows though that most things that are like nominated tend to be shit. But the fact that All Quiet on the West, because I was been tempted to watch All Quiet on the Western Front, then I realised it was nominated for loads of different awards and stuff, and I'm like, oh, it might be a bit shit. And I was like, actually, I am still tempted to watch it because I do like war films. I thought, go on then, I'll throw it on. And literally, the first like 10, 15, no, it's probably the first 10 minutes actually. It's really interesting, the intro, and then you sort of understand where it's going, and you're like, oh shit. And I'm like, okay, I'm hooked. Okay, I'm going to watch the rest of this now. And yeah, I can see why it's won all of its awards, and it's deservedly so. It's not because it's like flavor of the month or, it was some, when say, what's his name? Austin Butler that did Elvis. Right, and and he completely learned Elvis's mannerisms. He completely changed his voice to the fact that that's kind of his voice now, right? You kind of like, oh yeah, that's like an Oscar film. That's like the sort of film where you're like, oh yeah, that's going to be nominated for an Oscar. Whereas, so that's the sort of film that doesn't entice me. Whereas this film is like, it doesn't feel like it was designed to go for any Oscars or awards or anything. It was just designed to tell a really solid story. And and I sort of appreciate the film for that. Whereas Elvis to me is like, yeah, sure, it's a biopic about Elvis and stuff, but the way it's done and marketed and everything, it's like, oh yeah, this is an Oscar win. This is because it's just one of those. I'm
not saying Elvis isn't an Oscar baity film because Austin Butler is. The way it's marketed, the type of biopic it is, and what biopics are typically good Oscar bait. So I'm not going to argue with you too much, but it is worth watching the Elvis film. Like I don't like Elvis as like a singer. Like spoilers for Elvis's life, who's one of the biggest public figures of all time. It's a film which definitely makes you be empathetic towards Elvis, and it does a good job of that. And it's a film in the sense that it's very over stylized. So you say that, and I agree in the sense that it's an Oscar baity film, but it's not a bad film. I would recommend it, and Austin Butler is great in it.
I was just using it as an example. There are other films out there, but that was the only one I could recently think of. So no shade. I'm not shitting on it. I'm just.
I don't agree with you, but it's worth watching. As for All Quiet on the Western Front, it just looks like a really emotional, epic war film I do want to watch. But the BAFTAs, I don't know. Kieran, like, you're in a hipster, like, you, like, really, like, as soon as someone gets an award, you just don't want to, like, I want to be the only person who likes it. At the same time, like, there is a bit of that in the BAFTAs, in the sense that, we've done an episode on it. Banshee of Inisherin, again, wins quite a lot of the BAFTAs, sorry. And the performances in Banshee of Inisherin are good, but the material they've got, I don't know, it could have been such a better film. And some of the films which don't win instead of Banshee of Inisherin is a fuck up, like. I don't know, the award shows cater towards, like, the indie darlings as well, the arty films, but the BAFTAs are worth watching. Even if you know the results, the BAFTAs are still worth watching.
What did you watch it on?
BBC iPlayer. But that's
the episode. So Mikey recommends you go and see Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Quantum Realm, is it? Or Quantumania?
But yeah, I recommend you go see it in the cinema. It's a big sci-fi fun romp epic film.
And I recommend you watch All Quiet on the Western Front and The Last Duel, although I haven't finished it yet, so the ending could be shit, but I said I'm enjoying it so far. And then watch the BAFTAs from Mikey.
Yeah.
There you are.
As always, for listening.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Look after yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye.